Two migrant workers, George and Lennie, have been laid up a vast miles away from the California farm where they are due to start work. George is a small, dark man with sharp, strong features. Lennie, his companion, is a giant of a man with shapeless face. Overcome with thirst, the two stopped in a clearing by a pool and decided to camp for the night. As the two converse, it becomes clear that Lennie has an intellectual disability and is deeply devoted to George and dependent upon him for protection and guidance. George finds that Lennie, who loves sparing soft things but often accidentally kills them, has been carrying and stroking a dead mouse. George angrily throws it away, fearing that Lennie might catch a disease from the dead animal. George complained loudly that his life would be easier without having to care for Lennie, but the reader sensed that their friendship and devotion is mutual. He and Lennie share a dream of buying their own piece of land, farming it, and much to Lennie's delight, keeping rabbits. George ends the night by treating Lennie to the story he often tells him about what life will be like in such an idyllic place. The next day, the men reported to the nearby farm. George, afraid of how the boss will react to Lennie, insists he does the talk. He lied and explained that they went out together because their cousin and a horse kicked Lennie in the head when he was a kid. They're hired, and they met Candy, an old swamper or handyman with a lost hand and an old dog. And they met Curly, the bad boss's son. Curly had just been married, possessive of his flirtatious wife and full of suspicion of jealousy. As soon as George and Lennie were alone at home, Curly's wife showed up and flirted with them. Lennie thought she was pure, but George, sensing the difficulties that can result from the struggle, George warned Lennie to stay away from her. Before long, rank hands returned from the fields for lunch. George and Lennie met Slim, a skilled donkey driver who exercises great authority at the farm. Slim commented on the rarity of such friendships between George and Lennie. Carlson, another ranch hand, suggests that since Slim's dog has just given birth, they should offer a puppy to Candy and shoot Candy's old, good-for-nothing dog. The next day, George confessed to Slim that he and Lennie are not cousins, but had been friends since childhood. He told me how Lennie used to get them in trouble. For example, they were forced to flee from their last job because Lennie tried to touch a woman's clothing and was accused of rape. Slim agrees to give Lennie one of his puppies, and Carlson continues to badger Candy to kill his old dog. When Slim agrees with Carlson, saying that death would be a welcome relief to the suffering animal, Candy gives in. Carlson, before leading the dog outside, promised to do the job painlessly.
Slim went to the barn to do some work, and Curly, who was maniacally searching for his wife, headed to the barn to accost Slim. Candy overheard George and Lennie discussing their plans to buy land, and offered his life-saving if they would let him live there too. The three made a deal to let no one else know of their plan. Slim returned to the bank house, berating Curly for his speeches. Curly, searching for an easy target for his anger, found Lennie and picked a fight with him. Lennie crushed Curly's hand in the altercation. Slim warned Curly that if he tried to get George and Lennie fired, he would be the laughing stock of the farm. The next night, most of the men went to the local brothel. Lennie was left with Crooks, the lonely black stable hand, and Candy. Carl's wife pleaded with them, refusing to leave until the other men came home. She noticed the cuts on Lennie's face and suspected that he had not a piece of machinery as Curly claimed. It wasn't possible for hurting her husband. This thought amuses her. The next day, Lennie accidentally killed his puppy in the barn. Curly's wife entered and consoled him. She admitted that life with Curly was a disappointment and wished that she had followed her dream of becoming a movie star. Lennie told her that he loves petting soft things, and she offered to let him feel her hair. When she grabbed too tightly, she cried out. In his attempt to silence her, he accidentally broke her neck. Lennie fled back to a pool of the Salinas River that George had designated as a meeting place should either of them get into trouble. As the men back at the ranch discovered what has happened and gathered together a lynch party, George joined Lennie. Much to Lennie's surprise, George was not mad at him for doing a bad thing. George began to tell Lennie the story of the farm they will have together. As he described the rabbits that Lennie would tend, the sound of the approaching lynch party grew even louder. George shot his friend in the back of the head. When the other men arrived, George let them believe that Lennie had the gun, and George wrestled away from him and shot him. Only Slim understood what has really happened. That George has killed his friend out of mercy. Slim constantly leads him away, and the other men, completely puzzled, watched them leave. The end.